It shouldn't have been that easy. But it was. Almost too easy, in fact. If she knew it would be so easy, she might have done it much earlier. She wondered why she waited so long to try. Alex stretched languidly in her lover's bed. Turning on her right side, she stood up and walked into the bathroom. She turned on the shower, adjusted the temperature, and climbed into it. She quickly soaped herself up and was about to turn on the water when Trey entered the room, and they switched places. 15 minutes later, the pair were ready to go. The man leaned towards her, but the woman pulled away slightly so that his kiss would not smear the lipstick on her newly painted lips. "Calm down, love. Let's stick to the plan, and then we can do this for a long time," she warned him. "Sorry." "You're right," he replied. "Your lips are just so damn kissably." The woman smiled radiantly. At least for the first month, this part of her life went exactly as she had planned. She didn't expect anything less. In fact, she expected this to continue much longer. Some would call what Alex and Trey were doing on Wednesday afternoon an affair. She believed that the term affair was too rude. Alex loves Trey and considers their Wednesday meetings to be more than just a dirty fling. Alexis Temple wasn't looking for love when she found it the second time. She had been happily married to Chris Temple for 12 years when she met Trey Latham at an executive board meeting at Parkfield Hospital 4 months earlier. Alexis is the director of human resources at Parkfield, and Trey is the new marketing representative for Riley Gordon, the hospital's public relations firm. Trey was dressed in a charcoal gray pinstripe suit that was clearly tailored to his athletic, 5'3", 100-pound frame. His brown hair is wavy and thick, and his big brown eyes sparkle when he speaks. She feels butterflies in her stomach when he looks at her. Over the next few months, they communicated several times before Alex realized that her feelings for Trey were more than superficial. To call it an affair would be wrong. This is a relationship for which she has nothing to apologize for or feel guilty about. On Saturday afternoon, Chris Temple walked to the mailbox and picked up a handful of letters and miscellaneous correspondence that had been dropped there that day. The handful contained 2 envelopes from Indiana containing license plate stickers and printed 2023 registration documents. Chris opened the envelope addressed to him, attached the new sticker to his license plate, and placed the registration in the glove compartment of his car. He then opened the envelope addressed to his wife, placed a new sticker on her license plate, and tried to put her registration in the glove compartment, but the glove compartment was locked. Who locks their glove compartment? Chris thought angrily, returning to the house. He took his wife's car keys from the shelf, opened the glove compartment, and put in the new registration. He closed the box and was about to leave when a crazy thought came to him. Chris opened the glove compartment again and looked inside. There he found the car's owner's manual, the last 3 registrations, and a cell phone, the only thing that surprised him at that moment. Crap, 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 he muttered to himself. Chris knew his wife was upstairs in the shower. As had been customary for the past 6 months, she returned home about 20 minutes early from her Saturday morning workout and, as usual, went straight to the shower. He slowly turned on the phone and waited until it booted up completely, then looked at his call history. Since she didn't expect anyone to find her phone, she didn't clear her call history. There was a short list of calls, but a long list of text messages, all from one Trey Latham. Even before he saw the text messages, Chris knew his 13-year marriage was over. Reading the messages didn't change his opinion at all. Chris turned off the phone, put it back in the glove compartment, and locked it again. After hanging his wife's keys back on the rack, he listened for a second, hearing the shower still running upstairs. He went outside to mow the yard and think. The messages told Chris that his wife had been having an affair with Trey Latham for almost a year. He remembered that her late Wednesday evenings in the office began around this time. Apparently, she took a long lunch break and then added it to the end of the workday so that she could get some work done. About 6 months ago, judging by correspondence, they added Saturday mornings to their game days. Chris remembered that this coincided with his wife starting to train at a local gym. Tears welled up in my eyes. He slammed both hands on the handle of the lawnmower. Hearing the sound of a mower from the second-floor bedroom, Alex smiled. She knew that Chris liked to mow the yard, both for exercise and because he actually liked the look of a well-kept yard. As she got dressed to enjoy the rest of her Saturday, she realized that she was truly lucky. She had an adoring husband and a hot young lover. It had been almost a year since Alex had expanded her sex life to include Trey, and everything was going just as she had planned. Thanks to careful planning and good organization, her life had never been more fulfilling. A loving husband, 2 wonderful children, a great job, and a 29-year-old second husband who filled the emotional and physical gaps she felt were in her marriage. Yes, there were times when she felt almost depressed, but mostly she knew that she was living life to the fullest. By taking a lover, a second love, she essentially completed what she wanted in life. She did not take the easy way out. She lived her life to the fullest, so it seemed to her. She lived life to the fullest on this day, and it meant being able to have sex with 2 different men on the same day, which was very lustful, and always resulted in mind-blowing pleasure when she managed to get her husband to make love to her in the evening, after earlier in the day, her lover had made love to her. After sex with Trey, Alex always showered and cleaned herself thoroughly, so she had no problem with Chris initiating sex with her on those nights. In fact, after she was sure that her husband would not be able to find out that she had sex earlier in the day, she began to initiate sex herself in order to get additional excitement from her own naughtiness. Alex and Trey's relationship was actually love, and not just lust. The young man was warm and intelligent. His interests were different from those of her husband, which, in her opinion, made her life more fulfilling. Trey knew from the beginning that she was married and loved her husband, but she had more than enough love to include Trey in her heart. As for sex, Trey is 13 years younger than her husband and more strong-willed both personally and physically. He has abs and about 14 kilograms of additional defined muscles on his body. Sex with each of them was also different. With Chris, they usually made slow, passionate love, but with Trey, the sex was rougher and more physically intense. That Saturday, Alex didn't get to have sex with the 2 men because Chris sneaked out that evening, using the excuse of being tired. She had to admit that he looked a little out of place as he walked into the house after mowing. In fact, Chris was glad that he didn't throw up when she tried to start something. As he lay facing Alex, he thought about how many times his wife had slipped him careless seconds. Chris was the vice president of finance for a mid-sized tool and die manufacturing company. Every morning, he arrived at work at 7 o'clock, refilled his Keurig coffee maker, and rummaged through his email inbox. The plant officially began work at 8 o'clock. At 8:15, he walked into the office of production manager Bob Casey, a friend who had divorced his wife of 15 years, 5 years earlier. "Do you have a few minutes for something personal, Bob?" he asked, and when Bob nodded, Chris walked in and closed the door behind him. This can't be good, Bob decided. 5 minutes later, Bob had the whole story from Chris and was on the phone with his divorce lawyer, who was an old college friend of his. Bob's friend hosted Chris that same day, unscheduled. Alex was shocked when she was handed divorce papers at the hospital the following Wednesday after returning from her date with Trey. Little did she know that her husband was unhappy in their marriage. She completely failed to notice the irony of how timely the documents were handed to her. While she was trying to piece everything together, it didn't even occur to her that Chris had found out about her relationship with Trey. As soon as she calmed down enough, Alex called her husband. "Why? Why?" she asked through tears. "What did I do wrong?" "Seriously? Are you still asking? You've been having an affair for about a year now, and you still can't understand why I'm divorcing you?" Alex was stunned for the second time in a matter of minutes. She continued to sob, but she had no words for Chris, so he ended the call. As Chris expected, Alex was waiting for him at the house when he returned, rather than staying late at work as usual. "Won't Mr. McCoy be upset with you for not making up the hours for that long lunch?" Chris asked, entering the house from the garage. "I love you, honey. You know. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Trey, but I felt it was best for everyone," Alex said. "For all?" Chris interrupted. You and your lover are not everything. What about me? Am I not a part of everyone? Yes, part of it, she said quietly. I guess I need to explain. Do you think so? Chris chuckled. I didn't tell you about Trey because I knew you wouldn't understand, and you'd ruin everything like you're doing now, she began. Am I ruining everything? Sorry, Mother. What exactly am I spoiling? Chris growled. I wasn't looking for this relationship, Chris. It just happened, and I'm glad about it. Trey is a wonderful man. You'll like him if you get to know him better. This is much more than a novel. This is much more than sex, than lust. I love him just like you, Chris, and I can't give him up, just like I can't give up on you. But we are married. You can't love two men at the same time, Chris objected. No, I can. Marriage does not mean that it is possible to automatically turn off your emotions, turn off love. You are my first love. He is my second. I am capable of loving several men at the same time. It's not a question of one or the other, Alex said. Trey understands that I already have a full life. He is ready to be satisfied with the little time I have for him. You and the family get the lion's share of my time, as it should be. I didn't take anything away from you and the children. I just added something for myself, besides you and the children. Trey is not your husband. He is an interventionist. He should be grateful for any time he gets from you. But I am your husband, and you have 2 children. All this time should be given to us, Chris said. I love my life as it is now, and I don't want to change anything. I need you all, Alex said. I don't want to get a divorce. Yes, but I didn't want my wife to sleep with another man. Apparently, we don't always get everything we want, Chris said. Remember when we got married, baby? Do you remember the words love, honor, and cherish? How can sex with another man be love, honor, or saving me? You talk about it so dirty, disgusting, Alex said. There is nothing like it here. From your point of view, maybe. For me, it definitely is, Chris said. She growled. The argument ended when the couple's 2 children came downstairs to greet their father. Both parents knew that their children had heard the heated conversation. The children, 13-year-old Josh and 10-year-old Kayla, looked very awkward. Sorry you had to hear that, Chris said. In the future, we will try to behave more like adults. But yes, we are getting divorced. We both still love you, and you guys had nothing to do with our breakup. I agree with everything your father said, except that there will be no divorce, Alex said. He won't be so selfish as to ruin your lives because something happened to him. He won't ruin your life because he didn't change it, Chris said. Mother, did you cheat on your dad? How could you? Kayla screamed. Alex winced with displeasure. She looked first at her daughter, then at her husband. Watch your language, Kay. I'm still your mother, Alex rasped. Only because I can't divorce you, the girl shouted back and ran upstairs to her room. Well, that was nice, Chris said to no one in particular. I think we should have a family meeting while we eat. Josh, bring your sister so we can talk. As Alex sat and looked at the other 3 members of her family, they had a candid discussion about her infidelity and her impending divorce. He told the kids he was filing for joint custody instead of letting Alex take custody of them. You can't take my children away from me, Chris, she shouted. And I'm not going to, but you won't get primary custody either. You can't cheat and make me a dad just for the weekend, he snapped. So who is the guy you're cheating on Dad with? Josh asked his mother. This is hardly appropriate, young man, Alex began. I think it's very appropriate, Chris interjected. The children are old enough to hear the truth no matter what you want. Chris took a few minutes to tell the kids everything he had learned about Trey Latham over the past week. Alex was surprised at how much her husband knew about her lover. He had already become a habit of surprising her, and he did not hesitate to tell his children about what he had learned. Alex spent most of this part of the conversation looking at her plate. There will be no divorce, children. I just need to get your father to see things the right way, Alex said, picking up the empty plate and glass and walking into the kitchen. Both kids looked at Chris, who shrugged. They both knew their father well enough to know that he was not the kind of man who would put up with a cheating wife. After finishing dinner, the kids headed straight to their rooms, but not before Josh said, "We're here if you need us, Dad. We'll talk, but we don't want to get in the way of stray bullets, if you know what I mean." "Thanks, guys." "I appreciate it," Chris replied. After dinner, the family usually gathered in the family room to watch a movie or a few TV shows, unless the children were busy doing homework. Alex was sitting in the living room, ostensibly reading a book, when Chris went into the family room to watch Jeopardy! He smiled to himself as he sat down at the table, knowing that Alex hadn't read a book in months. Sitting in the living room, Alex fought back tears as she thought, and occasionally turned the page of her book to make it look like she was reading. 6 hours ago, she thought she had an ideal life. Now she knew that her marriage was hanging by a thread, and her perfect life would go downhill if she couldn't get her husband to understand what she wanted, what she needed. Chris portrayed her relationship with Trey as vulgar, almost base, although in reality, everything is not at all like that, according to Alex. Her husband is a good man, maybe even a wonderful one, but he is not without flaws, weaknesses, if you will. Trey's arrival in her life filled those gaps, and their sex was an expression of their love, not the gratification of lust. Well, mostly, she had to admit. She hid her relationship with Trey from Chris because she knew her husband would never allow it, but now that he found out, the relationship looked wrong. Alex believed that she had thought of all the details to keep her relationship with Trey a secret. She had provided for all the little things, including the fact that their sex life remained almost the same as before. Trey arrived without increasing or decreasing the number or intensity of their lovemaking. She racked her brains trying to understand how her ignorant husband suddenly guessed about this. Until a few hours ago, Alex considered herself the smarter wife, including because she managed to hide her relationship with Trey for almost a whole year. She had to admit that the first time Chris enjoyed her body, hours after Trey's, made her feel superior. Trey seemed quite happy with the state of his relationship with Alex. Although she is 13 years older than him, she has the body of a much younger woman, a beautiful face, and is smart and sociable. He was surprised at how quickly he managed to get this seemingly happily married woman into bed. She made it clear that she was interested in more than just mattress gymnastics, although she did not seek to replace her husband. This more than suited Trey, who enjoyed the freedom of being a bachelor. The only request Trey made of her was to add a second day to their weekly dates. At first, Alex refused, but after a month, she enthusiastically agreed, and so began Alex's Saturday classes. Trey tried to pretend to sympathize with Alex's situation when they met for lunch at a restaurant located away from the house where they sometimes met to eat. She called the young man to arrange a meeting shortly after arriving at her office. "Honestly, Alex, if you get divorced, it will give us more time to communicate. That's not too bad for me," Trey said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "But I know that you don't want a divorce. Are we really going to have to separate?" "I hope no. I hope I can make him see things my way," Alex said. "He's always been reasonable, and I know he still loves me. So if I can appeal to his sense of justice..." "If I had a choice, I wouldn't give up any part of you," Trey interjected. "Why should your husband?" "Because he loves me, and I just need to make him understand that maintaining the status quo makes me happy and doesn't affect our love for each other," she said. "But until I can convince him, I think we need to calm down a little. It would only hurt the matter if I looked like I was rubbing his face in it." Chris wasn't surprised when Alex didn't show up for her workout on Saturday morning. He knew she was smart enough to step back, at least visually, from her relationship with Trey. Still, he just had to poke the bear to gauge her reaction. "At this point, you might as well go to your lover, baby. I've already filed for divorce, and I'm not going to change my mind," Chris said as he and Alex sat in the family room while their children were outside. "Just because you applied doesn't mean you can't change your mind, honey," she said. "Do you love me, Chris? What about children? More or less than me?" she asked quickly. Alex caught him off guard. She could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find the right answer. "I love you all equally, but in different ways. You know it." "What do you mean?" Chris asked. to the fact that people can love many people on different levels, different and the same at the same time, she said. I love you, the children, and Trey, everyone equally, and at the same time in different ways. I can't stop loving any of you. I love you, Chris, and I need you. You are my husband, and as the father of my children, you can have me most of the time. But I also love Trey. In a different way, and at the same time just like you. But since he is not a member of our family, he has to be content with less of my time. Although he would have liked more, he accepted the role. If you loved me as much as you always say you do, you would graciously accept your dominant role and be happy, for both you and me. But you stubbornly ignore the obvious, Al, Chris said. Trey is not part of our family, so he cannot be loved to the same degree as the children and I, and should not be given a minority role in this family structure. Family is what we say, Alex said. I want to include it in ours. I am a good wife and mother. Of course, you can give me this little bit if you love me as much as you say. Of course I can't. I will not allow you to leave our family to take a lover. And for your information, I don't love you as much as I did 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, you can't stop loving someone overnight, but your blatant disrespect for me over the last year has really eroded my reserves of love, Chris said. I didn't disrespect you. I love you as much as I always have, Alex said. So you never loved me as much as I loved you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to have a lover, Chris said. He is more than a lover. He's like a second husband, she said. Yes, younger husband. I see, Chris muttered. Every night, Chris slept on the sofa in the family room, despite his wife's constant urging to return to their bedroom. We can't talk unless we're in the same bedroom at night, she noted. Alex's eyes got big when, at their first meeting with the lawyers, Chris's lawyer started talking about selling the house and dividing the property. You can't be serious. I don't want to get a divorce, Alex said. Well, it will happen, so get used to it. We need to sell the house so we can both afford something bigger than a closet, Chris said. Fine, you won, Alex practically screamed. I'll leave him, I promise. As if I can trust your promises. You had no problem breaking our oath. I don't understand why I should trust your promises. You'll figure out a way for me not to catch you next time, and you'll cheat behind my back, Chris said. It's not about winning, you stupid woman. It was me who lost. Our children lost. Alex lowered her head in shame. What if I let you take a toy? Will we be even? She asked. You just don't understand, Al. I probably wanted just you and me. Chris felt uneasy when a week later, his father-in-law and mother-in-law called and asked why he and their daughter were getting a divorce. He decided that since they were her parents, she should have told them. He always got along well with Alex's parents, calling them Mom and Dad, just like he called his parents. I'm really sorry, guys, he said sadly. I didn't call because I thought Alex would tell you. You know what they say when you assume. His father-in-law gasped when Chris told them both that their daughter was cheating on him with Trey Latham. Are you sure, son? That doesn't look like my girl, George Taylor said breathlessly. Well, it's not really treason, George. She loves them both. And she doesn't want to get a divorce, said Velma Taylor. Two mouths opened wide in shock, a mile apart. What the hell is going on here, Velma? George barked. What do you know about this? He's a good guy, George. You'd like him. She doesn't cheat? She loves them both, Velma said. What nonsense are you talking about, Velma? Explain everything quickly and clearly, otherwise there will be a second divorce, said George. Chris's mother-in-law apparently knew about Alex's infidelity, but continued to insist that it was not cheating because her daughter loved both men. This is not cheating, but polyamory, Velma said confidently. Well, if this is polyamory, then why don't I have anyone on my side? And why do I seem to be the only one who hasn't been told about these plans? Well, apparently me and Dad, Chris said. She cheated on Chris, and you remained silent? I owe you some, Vel, George said. Sorry, son. He's a good guy, George. You'll see that when you meet him, Velma said. Will you meet? I don't want to meet my daughter's boyfriend. He wouldn't have sex with a married woman if he was such a nice guy, George said. Thank you for your understanding, Dad, Chris said. Trey held back his personal celebration of the end of his divorce from Alex, trying to look concerned, but in reality he wanted to jump and scream. After a year in which he sought to spend more time with his mistress, he was going to get his wish every 2 weeks, since Alex and Chris would be getting their babies for a week each. Alex tried her best to avoid seeing Trey the first week Chris had the kids, but after crying for a week, she practically begged to spend a week with Trey the next time Chris was with the kids. That first Monday, when Alex stayed overnight, Trey made dinner and dessert for the first time since they had been together. Trey placed an order at his favorite Italian restaurant, and everything was ready when Alex walked in on him after work. Wow. Candles and everything else. Very kind, Trey. A girl can get used to this kind of treatment, Alex said. Trey played Alex's favorite music, classical, on the stereo throughout dinner. She smiled broadly at the young man, noting to herself that her now ex-husband only liked classic rock. She smiled even wider when, after finishing the meal, he lifted her to her feet and spun her around in a slow dance to several songs. They cleaned themselves up and retired to Trey's bedroom, where they spent the rest of the night having sex, first gentle and then more energetic. Alex was sure that the evening gymnastics in the bedroom was one of the best in her life. Maybe divorce won't be so bad after all, she thought to herself. Trey was delighted when he woke up this morning hugging Alex. 20 minutes and one change of position later, they lay face to face, breathing heavily from exertion. Damn it, I'll be late if I don't hurry up, Alex said. Well, let's save time by taking a shower together, Trey suggested, raising his eyebrows. It definitely won't save time, Alex replied. You will stay here until I finish. I promise to be quick. Friday night was the first time they were together at a restaurant in public. Alex was wearing a sexy short red dress that she bought especially for the occasion. Damn, woman, you're gorgeous, Trey said. She knew she looked sexy, and she and Trey made an attractive couple. Several times during the evening, she saw men staring at her. Alex was physically tired when she left Trey's house late Sunday night to pick up the kids from Chris's house. She and Trey had sex late into the night on Friday night, 4 times on Saturday, and 2 more times on Sunday. Having a 29-year-old full-time partner was physically more challenging than Alex was used to. A month later, Alex trudged back to the car to pick up her children. As had already become customary, she was quite satisfied sexually, but on the way home she felt that she was missing something. It seemed that the more time she spent with Trey, the more their relationship developed sexually and eroded emotionally. She rubbed her right wrist, reminding herself of the scratch she received when Trey handcuffed her to the headboard, a new experience for her. Admittedly, the pleasure in handcuffs was thunderous, but at the same time she felt somewhat devalued, realizing that Trey had forced her into submission. When Trey pulled out the handcuffs, she expressed reluctance, but he quickly got over it. After which she lay down separately from the young man, noting to herself that Chris had never made her feel like anything other than an equal partner in bed. She mentally brushed it aside, deciding that it was most likely just a generational difference between her ex-husband and her lover. Despite the fact that the children knew about Trey, during the weeks when she had children, Alex only interacted with him a couple of times a week, and always during work hours. She has not yet introduced her second love to the children. On Wednesday, when Alex called, Trey did not answer the phone or return calls. When he didn't call at noon on Thursday, she became worried and called him on his work phone. The Riley Gordon receptionist wasn't too eager to talk about Trey's whereabouts until Alex admitted that she was Trey's girlfriend and couldn't contact him. He's been in the hospital since Tuesday evening, said the girl on the other end of the phone. Apparently, he got into some kind of fight near his favorite sports bar and was very badly injured. Perhaps that's why you couldn't reach him. The receptionist gave Alex the necessary information, and a few minutes later she was on her way to the hospital. 15 minutes later, she was looking at Trey's beaten face. Why didn't you call me? I found out about this 2 days later from your administrator, Alex said. Due to his injuries, Alex couldn't decipher the look in Trey's eyes. He had a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and, she discovered, 2 broken ribs and bruised testicles. "Because your ex-husband did this to me." "I know that," Trey muttered. "This unscrupulous bastard didn't do it himself, but paid someone. He will pay for everything when the police catch these 2 thugs." "No, no, this can't be true, Trey. Chris is too good to do that. He is one of those who divorced me as soon as possible, but would never harm anyone. I think that's why I thought I could have 2 husbands," Alex said. "Yes, and what came of it?" Trey growled. "I'm telling you, he's a weakling and not the good guy you think he is. He will end up in prison. I will not stand in ceremony with him just because he is the father of your children. I'm sure he didn't do it, but still, Trey, you should have called me. I shouldn't have found out about this 2 days after something happened." Considering how cold and calculating Chris had been when he filed for divorce, Alex couldn't be sure that her ex-husband hadn't had a hand in Trey's beating. And if this is not so, then she will have to admit that she herself is partly to blame for the beating. "What the hell, Chris? Does your ego feel better now?" Alex shouted to her ex when he answered the phone that same day. Why the fuck are you screaming?" Chris said quietly in response, wondering what his ex-wife was babbling. "Nice try, Chris. Trey is very angry and in a lot of pain, and when you get caught by the cops, you're going to jail." "I can't calm him down," she said. "As you say," Chris answered and ended the conversation, still not understanding what Alex was shouting about. Alex had to admit that Chris actually looked confused by what she was saying. She wondered when he had become so good at pretending to be innocent. How ironic. The police showed up at Chris's house about 20 minutes after he talked to Alex on the phone. "I made fresh coffee. I was waiting for you guys since my ex called a few minutes ago. From what she said, I'm guessing something happened to her beloved second husband. And I'm the #1 suspect," Chris said. Chris poured coffee for both officers and patiently answered questions for about 15 minutes. As they left, the officers agreed that it did not appear that the jilted ex-husband was a suitable suspect. A month later, police ruled Chris out as a suspect in Trey's beating. A few weeks later, Chris and his father-in-law were sitting quietly in a bar on the outskirts of town, enjoying a couple of glasses of Angel's Envy rye. "Thank you, Dad." "I owe you a big debt," Chris said quietly. "The damned police were absolutely sure that I was involved in beating this stupid bastard. Yes, you were such an obvious target that they simply could not help but notice you. But you don't owe me anything. I owe you this for what my stupid daughter did to you. You were a good husband and a great father to my grandchildren," said George Taylor. "I'll tell you what. From now on, you will have to buy drinks. I can get used to this expensive booze." They both clinked glasses and took a sip of the amber liquid. 2 months after Trey's attack, Alex had not had sex for so long that she could hardly stand it. She had met another young man for whom she had developed feelings, and although it was not love, she needed physical intimacy. From having 2 husbands providing intimacy just a few months ago to having had no intimacy for 2 months, Alex was desperate. She thought about bringing it up with Trey, but their relationship wasn't as close as it had been before the attack, and since he didn't mind being the other man in a polyamorous relationship when she was married to Chris, he should be fine being the first man in such a relationship. For her own peace of mind, she decided that, if necessary, she would ask for forgiveness later, but would not be the first to seek permission. Delmont Lafleur was almost as big as Trey, 5'9", 98 kilograms, and he looked maybe a little better, although not quite as rugged. He grew up in New Orleans and had a mixture of Cajun and old-fashioned Southern accent. He is 25 years old, more polite, but less arrogant than Trey. He works as a junior manager at a local firm, and from the moment Alex met him in line at the local Starbucks a few months ago, she wondered if he could replace her ex-husband in the new polyamorous trio. I decided it was time to find out. By the time Trey was physically able to have sex again, Delmon had firmly occupied his former role as Alex's second husband. Alex saw her second boyfriend twice a week in the weeks when she had children who were old enough to take care of themselves for the few hours she was away from home on Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings, like she did when she was married. Just as importantly, Trey didn't need to know any more about Delmon than Chris needed to know about Trey, Alex noted. The only time Chris and Alex's lives intersected was when the parents handed their children over to each other as part of a custody agreement and at certain school events. Chris was cordial with Alex when they interacted, while Alex constantly tried to win her ex-husband's affections. It was the children who informed Chris that his ex-wife had returned to a polyamorous life about 6 months after it became a fact. Josh and Kayla mentioned in passing that they often did their Saturday chores early while their mother was at the gym so they could spend the rest of the day with friends away from her. Hey, she's still your mother no matter what she did to me. Be respectful and helpful, Chris said. It's not just what she did to you, Dad. She destroyed our family, Josh said categorically. Chris had to admit that his son's assessment of the situation was correct, but what made him raise his eyebrows in thought was the information that his ex was again telling the children that she went to the gym on Saturday mornings. Chris never told the children exactly when their mother cheated on him, and as children, they themselves never asked about it. Chris put this information off until next week, when Alex had the kids. He borrowed a friend's car and parked a block from Alex's house with 2 Dunkin' Donuts and a cup of coffee. She was already all wet, remembering the morning with Delmon, and did not suspect that she was being followed. Chris smiled as he watched Alex park his car on the street outside the house divided into 2 apartments. He wrote down the address as he finished his second Bavarian cream donut and looked up just in time to see a large, bare-chested young man in sports shorts standing at the door greet his ex with a tender kiss on the lips. She definitely likes them big and young, Chris said out loud, watching what was happening. Chris took the phone, pressed the button several times, and found out the young man's name. A few more clicks, and he got a lot more information and giggled happily. Thanks, Google, he said. Trey Latham didn't recognize the caller number that popped up on his phone, thought about sending the call to voicemail, but then decided to answer. Trey Latham, how can I help you? He answered confidently. You can't help me, idiot, but I can help you, Chris said without introducing himself. What the hell do you want, bastard? Is it too late to apologize to me? Trey growled into the phone. I have no reason to apologize to you, Chris said. But for selfish reasons, I will do you a favor that you don't deserve. Do you know where your favorite girl is now? I take it you know. Trey snapped. Isn't she with your damn children? Well, she is with the child, but not with mine. She definitely has her type. He's a big bastard. Probably the same height as you, but a little younger. God, if she keeps this up, she'll be dating kids in a few years, Chris chuckled. Let's say I believe you. Who is this bastard? Trey asked. According to Google, he is Delmont Lafleur, lives at 1234 William Street. You'll have to figure out the rest yourself. I'm out of coffee, Chris said. Alex barely had time to walk into Trey's house on Monday after work when Trey attacked her, only this time not literally, but figuratively. What the hell, Alex? Trey shouted. How long has this been going on? I already told you that I will never share with you. A little hypocritical of you, don't you think? The woman grinned in response. It was normal for you to interfere in my marriage with my husband, but now that you have become my number 1, you don't want anyone to interfere in your marriage. We've been together for several months now. It started when you were incapacitated. I have feelings for him, just like I do for you. If your husband, the one who was actually married to you, left you because of this, then why do you think that I will stay with you because of such disrespect? Trey asked. You are, of course, a great ass, Alex, but it won't be difficult for me to replace you. But you love me. You said you love me, the woman squealed. Apparently not enough, he replied. Alex's stomach churned when she received a call from the county medical center the next day. Alex was embarrassed when she had to tell the nurse on the other end of the line the names of both of her lovers, as required by law. Are you sure there were no others? The nurse asked again, perhaps too smugly. I don't Alex started. But then I realized how it must seem to a nurse who was just doing her job. No. No one else. The next day, Trey was on the phone with Chris Temple, ostensibly to return a favor Chris had done for him weeks earlier. Hey, buddy, just thought you should know, in case you need to get checked by the doctor too, but I tested positive for gonorrhea. Alex is my only woman, so I know it's from her. You don't have fun with her from time to time, do you? Trey said. In no case, Chris said with contempt in his voice. Although this does not surprise me. After 8 years of single life, Chris was sure that he would never marry again. This suited him quite well, and he did not look for a partner. After a regular Friday workout at the local YMCA, he stopped at a machine to drink Gatorade. The woman standing in front of him at the machine apparently did not understand that he was waiting, because she stood as if she had the whole day. Finally, he cleared his throat, causing the woman to jump in surprise and turn to him. Taking a quick look at her from head to toe, Chris saw that she was Asian, with long black hair tied in a ponytail. She was wearing what he considered cute workout clothes, a tight burgundy top and matching yoga pants. He believed that very few women looked good in yoga pants, but this woman was one of the few. He muttered pathetically. The woman smiled brightly at him, her large brown eyes reflecting a smile on her lips. Wow, great opening line, trickster. You obviously bought this bestseller, How to Court Girls for Dummies, the woman snorted. Chris stumbled back and raised both hands in surrender. The last thing he expected was verbal abuse from a 40-year-old soccer mom. Kidding. I was joking, she apologized, realizing that Chris wasn't really trying to pick on her. It always seems to happen here, by this machine. It was around this time that reality hit Chris's brain. He loved to joke with a pretty woman as much as other men. Gotcha, he said. With smart women, playing the stupid guy always works. You girls just can't resist rubbing a guy's nose in, he said. She smiled slyly. Yes. Okay. Let's say I believe it, she laughed. I'm Jade, and you, Chris Temple. And I would really appreciate it if you made your choice because I really need some Gatorade, he said with a big smile. A year later, they married in a small ceremony. Chris admired her sharp mind and quick tongue as well as her toned body. He learned that she was 51 years old, not 40, as he had originally assumed, and that she had divorced her cheating husband about 10 years ago. She completely shared Chris's views. I don't share my man ever. Is it clear? Jade said as they exchanged their stories. And I will never act with you according to the principle of two loves. You are my one and only love, and it should work both ways.